Welcome to Wisdom Education Services. This is the second video of the average topic. So in the last video you must have understood the concept of that sum of deviation of all the numbers from average is always 0. So if you haven't watched the video 1, I would recommend you to watch the video 1 because we are going to do the examples which are related to the video 1 in this video. So let me elaborate the point again. The point states that the sum of deviation of all the numbers from the average is always 0. Which means if I add the deviations of all the numbers from the average, the sum will always come out to be 0. Now, let me show it to you once again. So let's suppose there's these bunch of numbers and the average is the number which lies exactly in the middle of these numbers in terms of magnitude. The negative deviation is always equal to the positive deviation, by which if we add the negative and the positive numbers, the negative number cancel the positive numbers and the deviation is 0. So let us use this concept and answer a few questions. The first question here is we have to find the average of 400, 700, 800 and 900. Let me use my pen here and so that we can go ahead and solve this example. Now the first number is 400. The second number is 700. The third number is 800. And the fourth number is 900. My step 1 would be to assume any number to be the average. So let me assume 700 to be the average. Since 700 is the average, I would check the deviation of each number from the average. The deviation that 400 would be giving from 700 would be 400 minus 700, which would be a negative of 300. The deviation that 700 would be giving from 700 would be 0, because 700 minus 700 is always 0. The deviation that 800 would be giving from 700 would be 800 minus 700, which would be a positive of 100. Similarly, the deviation that 900 would be giving from 700 is positive of 200. So if I add all the deviations, it will come out to be 200 plus 100 minus 300. That will come out to be 300 minus 300, that is 0. So what we did in this question was we assumed 700 to be the average. Since I did not know that 700 is the average, we found out the deviation of all the numbers from 700 and we added the deviation. We got 0 as the total deviation, which shows that 700 is the average. Now let us see another question. Now in this question, this is a new type of question in which we have to find the average of 400, 700 and 800. Actually we're given the average of these four numbers to be 500. So these are the numbers here. The first number is 400. The second number is 700. The third number is 800. And the fourth number is X. And their average is 500. Let me change my color so that it appears to be good. So see, now 500 is the average. Now since 500 is the average, the sum of deviations of all the numbers from 500 have to be 0, using our first point. So the deviation of 400 from 500 is 400 minus 500, which is negative of 100. The deviation of 700 from 500 is 700 minus 500, which is a positive of 200. Similarly, 800 would be giving a deviation of a positive of 300. By adding all the deviation, we get 300 plus 200 minus 100. So if we add all these numbers, we get a positive of 400. Now since all these three numbers are giving a deviation of positive 400, in order to the deviation to be 0, this x here should give a deviation of negative 400, so that the sum of deviation becomes 0. So in order for it to give a deviation of negative 400, this number have to be 100. So we have solved for x. So let's take a recap here. So what we had to find out here is the average was given to be 500, and these were the numbers 400, 700, 800 and x. Now since 500 is the average, so we found out the deviation of 500 from each number. 400 gave a deviation of negative 100, 700 gave a deviation of positive 200, and 800 gave a deviation of positive 300. Now adding up all the deviation, we got positive 400 to be the deviation. Now since positive 400 is the deviation given by these three numbers, that means this number should give a deviation of negative 400, so that the total deviation comes out to be 0. Now since the deviation that x gives is negative 400 from 500, that means that number should be 500 minus 400, which is equal to 100. Now let's see another example. Now in this example, we have been given the numbers 81, 93, 99 and x, and their average is again 87. Now since this 87 is the average, which means that the sum of deviations of all these numbers from 87 would be 0. Now let us calculate the deviation again. Now 87 gives a deviation of negative 6 from 81, positive 6 from 893 and positive 12 from 99. If we calculate the net deviation, it comes out to be positive 12, which means that x should be giving a deviation of negative 12, so that it can become the average. Now since it gives a deviation of negative 12, which means that x should be 87 minus 12, which is 75. So we have solved the problem using the deviation method. Now this looks pretty simple here. Let me take a recap. So we were given the average of these four numbers 81, 93, 99 and x to be 87. So we calculated the deviation of all the numbers from 87, and whatever was the remainder, we changed the sign and gave it to x, because the total deviation has to be 0. And from that we found out x to be 75. Now let's see another example. In this question, a student got 81, 83, 87 and 95 from 4 tests. So how much marks should he be getting in the 5th test, so that his average in all the 5 tests becomes 85? Now, since he got this many number from the first 4 tests, let us assume from the fifth test he got x. Now, since he got x from the fifth test, the sum of deviation from 85 from all these numbers should be 0. So, the deviation given by 81 from 85 would be a negative of 4. The deviation given by 85 from 83 should be a negative of 2. The deviation given by 87 from 85 should be a positive of 2. Now, if we add all the deviation, the total deviation, this negative 2 will cancel out the positive 2. The total deviation will come out to be negative 4. Now, this x should be giving a deviation. Now, let us calculate for 95 as well. 95 would be giving a deviation of plus 10. So, on an effect, a deviation of plus 6 has been given by all these 4 numbers. So, x should be giving a deviation of negative 6. Hence, the number would be 85 minus 6, that is 79. So, let's take a quick recap here again. So, these were the 4 numbers: 81, 83, 87 and 95. And we had to find out how many marks did he got in the fifth test so that the average becomes 85. So we calculated the deviation of 85 from all the numbers and reversed the sign and gave it to the fifth test. And hence we got the marks in the fifth test to be 79. Now let's take a look in another example, and this is a complex example which is very complex if we solve it using the simple method. We'll see how the deviation method makes it more simpler. Now these are 11 numbers. The average of the first 5 numbers is 72. The average of the last 5 numbers is 81. And the average of all the 11 numbers is 78. So we have to find the middle number. Now this is the middle number here. Now let's see how can we find the middle number. Now since the average of all the 11 numbers is 78 and the average of first 5 numbers is 72. So the deviation given by each number from these first 5 numbers would be 72 minus 78, which is negative of 6. So negative of 6 is the deviation which will be given by the first 5 numbers on an average, which means the total deviation given by the first 5 numbers would be negative 6 times 5, which is negative 30. Since the average of the last 5 numbers is 81, so the deviation given by these numbers would be 81 minus 78, which would be a positive of 3. Now positive 3 is the deviation given by each number from these 5 numbers. Hence the total deviation will become 5 times positive 3, that is positive 15. Calculating the total deviation, it comes out to be the negative of 15. Now since the total deviation has to be 0, the sixth number must be giving a deviation of positive 15 in order to 78 to be the average. So since it's giving a deviation of positive 15, this number would be 78 plus 15, that is 93. Hence 93 is the average. Let me take a quick recap again. So we had these 11 numbers. Let me change my to arrow. We had these 11 numbers written down here. The average of first 5 numbers was 72. The average of last 5 numbers was 81. And the average of all the 11 numbers was 78. So the average, the deviation which each number from these first 5 numbers was 72 minus 78, which was negative 6. So negative 6 was the deviation given by the first 5 numbers, which would be negative 6 times 5, which will be equal to negative of 30. the deviation given by the last three numbers, which will be positive of 3, which will be 5 times positive 3, which will be equal to positive of 15. And we calculate the total deviation, which comes out to be negative 30 plus positive 15, which is negative of 15. Since the deviation given by these first 5 and last 5 numbers is negative of 15, the sixth number must be giving a deviation of positive of 15 in order to 78 to be the average. So the number would be 78 plus 15, that is 93, as you can see along the cursor. So this was a complex problem which is solved pretty easily by the deviation method. Now let us see one more example. Now again, the average score of a student in 10 papers is 80, and if the highest and the lowest scores are not considered, the average is 81. So let me write down all the numbers in descending order, the highest being the first number and the lowest being the 10th number. So the average of all the 10 numbers, let me just get my pen back. The average, I'll just change my color again in order for it to be good. So the average of all the 10 numbers is 80. And the average of second to ninth number is 81, which means the deviation given by each number from second to 9 is 80 minus 81, which is a positive of 1. Hence, the total deviation given by the 9 numbers would be positive 1 times 9, which is, positive 1 times 8, which is positive 8. Don't count it as 9. Why? Because the lowest number and the highest number is not considered from the first 10 numbers, which makes it 8 numbers. So the total deviation given by the second to ninth number is positive of 8. Now the highest number is given to us as 92, which would be giving a deviation of 92 minus 80, that is positive of 12. Now calculating the total deviation, it comes out to be positive of 20. Now positive of 20 is the total deviation given by the numbers from 1 to 9. Which means the 10th number should be giving a deviation of negative of 20. Now negative of 20 should be the deviation from 80, which means the 10th number should be 80 minus 20, which is equal to 60. Hence the number is 60. Now let me take a quick recap again. The average of there were 10 numbers. The average of second to the ninth number was 81. The average of the highest number, that is the first number, was 92. The average of all the numbers was given to us as 80. So we calculated the deviations that each number gave. The deviation given by the number from 2 to the ninth number was 80 minus 81. It was 81 minus 80. It was plus 8. And the deviation given by the highest number was plus 12. Hence the total deviation from these both numbers was positive of 20. Since positive of 20 is the deviation given by the number from the highest till the ninth position, hence the 10th position must be giving a deviation of negative 20 for the total deviation to be 0. Hence this number would be 80 minus 20, which is equal to 60. So now let's see another problem. Now in this problem, it's pretty easy. We've been given the average income of a shopkeeper for the first 4 months. So let's suppose these are the first 4 months, January, February, March and April. Now we have to assume a number to be the average, as we have been doing in the past examples. So what we have to do is we have to assume the closest number to be the average. It makes our calculations very easy. So we can't assume 2000 to be the average here. What we can do is we will assume 1570 to be the average, because if you can see, the numbers are close to 1570, all the numbers. So this should tell you what number to be assumed as the average. Now since we have assumed 1570 to be the average, the deviation given by 1570 from 1565 is a negative of 5. And the deviation given by 1569 from 1570 is negative of 1. The deviation given by 1574 from 1570 is positive of 4. The deviation given by 1580 from 1570 is a positive of 10. Now if we calculate the total deviation, it comes out to be 10 plus 4, 14, and minus 6, which is a positive of 8. Now this is our surplus, which we have got extra, which we have to redistribute back. Redistributing plus 8 to 4 members, 1, 2, 3, 4 months, we get a total shared deviation of positive 2. Now positive 2 is the total shared deviation which has to be given back. Hence the average would be 1570 plus 2, which is equal to 1572. Now you can see a question became very simple if we assumed the number to be the average, which was closer to these 4 numbers. Even if you assume 1000 to be the average, you will get the same answer, but you will involve large calculations. Hence, in order to reduce your calculations, you should smartly assume your average. Now let us see this example again. Now a student got 85, 86, 90 and 93 from first 4 tests. Now how many marks did he get in the 5th test if the average in the all 5 tests should be 88? Let me assume he scored X from his 5th test. So the sum of deviation of the numbers from the average should be 0. So let me write 88 here. Now the deviation given by 88 from 85 is negative of 3. The deviation given by 86 from 88 is 86 minus 88, which is negative of 2. The deviation given by 90 from 88 is a positive of 2. The deviation given by 93 from 88 is a positive of 5. So if I calculate the deviations, the total deviation, positive 2 and negative 2 will get cancelled, and a total deviation of positive 2 will come out. Now the total deviation of positive 2 has come out, which has to be shared among 5 members. Now the total deviation of positive 2 has been given by these 4 numbers. Hence this number X should be giving a deviation of negative 2, so that the total deviation comes out to be 0 and 88 can be declared as average. Since it's giving a deviation of negative 2, X should be 88 minus 2, which is equal to 86. Let me take a quick recap here again as well. Now we were given 4 numbers, 85, 86, 90 and 93. The deviation of these numbers we calculated from 88. The deviation that 85 gave from 88 was 85 minus 88, that is negative of 3. The deviation that 86 gave from 88 was 86 minus 88, that is negative of 2. The deviation that 90 gave from 88 was 90 minus 88, that is positive of 2. The deviation that 93 gave from 88 was 93 minus 88, which was positive of 5. Adding up all the deviations, we got positive 2 as the total deviation. Now the total deviation has to be 0 since 88 is the average. Hence, x must be giving a deviation of negative 2. So negative 2 deviation from 88 will show that the average, the number x is 88 minus 2, that is 86. Now this is the question. This is the same question again. Move it. Okay. Now this is the question that I'll let you solve. Okay, you have to solve it yourself, and I will give you about, let's say, 30 seconds for it. Meanwhile, I'm going to write the explanation. So these are 4 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are the youngest 2 members, and these are the ages. Okay, the average of all the numbers is 30 years. The deviation of 30 from 28 is negative of 2. This is positive of 2. This is a positive of 15. And this is a positive of 25. So adding up all the deviations, we get positive 40. Now this is the main part here. And since positive 40 is the deviation which has to be shared among, which has been given by these 4 numbers, hence these 2 numbers should be giving a deviation of negative of 40. Hence, negative 20 should be given by each member. Hence, on an average, these numbers would be 30 minus 20, that is 10. Now let me take a quick recap. The age of the 6 members of the family was given: 55, 45, 32 and 28. These were the 4 ages given, and the average age of all the members was 30 years. So what we did is we calculated the deviation of 30 from all the 4 members. It came out to be a positive of 40. Hence, a deviation of negative of 40 should be given by these 2 members. Hence, each one should be sharing a deviation of negative 20 and negative 20. Hence, the average age of these 2 members should be 10 years. So this leaves us to the end of the point 1 on average. I would recommend you to go through the exercise on average on our website, so that you can go ahead and excel in point 1. So see you in the next video in the point 2 of average, where we will be discussing and taking the deviation method to the next level. Thank you.